Okay, welcome back to our discussion on web application development using the Go programming language. Okay, so we reached the point where now we want to talk about authentication. Okay, and so that's just a fancy way of saying how can we restrict our web application. So in our instance, we want users who are registered, users who are then logged in, to be able to actually create a new quote. If you're not logged in, if you're not registered, all you can do is to see the quotes. Okay, and so that's what we mean by authentication. Okay, so we need to be able to allow the user to sign up. Okay, we want to be able to allow the user to log in once they have signed up. And so what we'll be doing at the end of this lesson has multiple videos because I want to break it down step by step. And so by the end of this lesson, we should have a bunch of routes. And again, we're using Restful Routing. Okay, so we want to be able to have a user sign up, okay, route, and of course we need a get method, okay, and then we also need the same route usr / sign up, okay, and this will be the one where we actually add the user to the database, so that's a post. Okay. Okay. Now we will also need the ability to log in. Okay, a route where the user logs in. Okay. All right, so user login. So this will show the login page. Okay, and so to see the login page, that's a GET request. You're requesting the login page. Now, when you actually log in, when the user actually logs in, it means that they're sending data to the database, which we have to verify. So that is a post. Okay, so I think by now you should be seeing the pattern when it comes to RESTful routing. We can use the same URL. However, we can attach different methods to that URL. And so the router will know which of the URLs to run. And as a consequence, it will know which of the handlers to run. Okay? Because remember, each URL has an associated handler. So these two routes have the same name, but they will have different handlers. One for the get method and one for the post method. Okay. Now, after we have that, then we want to be able to log the user out. And that will be a post method. Okay. Because the user is not requesting anything. It's actually a operation on our end, and so that will be logging out. Okay, and so right away, again, whenever we want to change the state of our application, okay, that is an indication that it's a post. Okay, change state of the application. So when you have to go to the database, add records to the database, save records to the database, update records in the database, change some session cookie or some such thing, right? Where you're changing state. That's a post method. And so if you're not doing any change state, it's simply a get method. And get method is just asking for some resource, asking for a page, asking for a form, okay, asking to download a file or some such thing. Okay, So we're getting something from the web server. Post means we're altering the web server. All right, so these are the URLs that we want, and we will create a bunch of handlers. One will be sign up user form. All right, the other one, of course, will simply be sign up user. Okay, the handler for this one will be login user form, and of course this one will simply be login user, right? And then the other one is simply logout user. Okay. All right. So these are our new URLs or new paths and the associated handlers. Okay, so that's our task. Now, one thing I want to mention, there is nothing really new. Well, yes, there are a few things that are new in this unit, but apart from those specific things, everything we will be doing is simply a rehash of what we have done before. We'll be creating URLs, creating handlers, using the middleware, creating insert methods to insert the data into the database, using a get method to get data from the database. So everything we've done, we'll just be using again. Okay, so hopefully everything that we will be doing makes sense. Okay, so that's our task. All right, so let's start off and let's just go ahead and add a few routes. Okay, so let me simply add the user route. So let me come here and I will simply add the user sign up and just user sign up. Okay, so let me put that here. So I'm just gonna copy and paste this. I don't want to retype it. Okay, so it's gonna be / quote, sorry, not quote, but user / sign up. Okay, and it's a get, so I'm using get, and the name of the handler will be sign up user. A capital letter, let me see. Sign up user form. Okay, so sign up user form. Okay, and then we will now have a corresponding post method where when the user clicks the submit button, we actually process the sign up form. Okay, the contents of the sign up form, and that will be sign up user. Obviously, we have not created those methods, those are handlers yet. So let's actually go and do that. Okay, so this is saved. And then, so again, get post. Remember, get means you're getting the form. Post means you are getting the contents from the form and sending them to the database, of course, after validating them. Okay, so let's go to our handlers. Okay, and let's put that underneath. All right, so let's just say func app star application, and it's sign up user form. Okay, and of course we need the HTTP dot response writer, and of course we need a request object of type HTTP dot request. Okay, again, nothing new. Okay, so let's just put some temporary data here. fmt.if print line. Response writer, and we'll say this is the sign up form. Okay, right? Good. For now, that's the sign up form. And then we want to actually process the sign up form. So sign up form, and then we'll say added a new user. Okay. Okay, so that should work for now, right? So we have our two handlers. Of course, we will replace those. We will replace these with actually code to display the form. Okay, and then of course we'll replace this to get the data from the form, to validate the data, and then to send that data to the insert method, which will actually insert that data, that row, that user into our database table. Good. Which brings us to the important part. We need to create a new table. And so I have my users table here. Okay. ID created at, which is timestamp. Okay. Default to no. We have the username text. We have email of type CI text. CI means case insensitive. So it doesn't matter if the user enters their email with capital letters or small letters. When we are comparing them, it becomes insignificant because we don't really care. It's case insensitive. All right. So if I choose an email that is D. Lewis capital letters, then as far as our database is concerned, capital D. Lewis and small letter d. Lewis is the same thing. Of course, we need to specify that each email is unique, and so we use the unique keyword for Postgres. So Postgres will reject any entry that it already has saved. So you cannot enter two emails that are the same. All right? And of course, we have password hash. So what does this really mean? It means that when the user enters their password, right, let's say their password is swordfish, you will not save swordfish in your database table. You will save a hash swordfish, and so it might look something like this. You might have that. You might have 23. You might have X. You might have P. You might have 8. You might have that. You might have at. You might have 00, FFF, whatever. Okay, it will just be a bunch of bytes. Okay, even the ones that are non-printable. All right. So by having a hash, and again, I think you all know what a hash is because you studied that in your data structures course where you learned about hashes, hash functions. Okay, and so we will put in the password the user gives us, and out will come out a hash of that password. All right, and why would you do that? Well, we will save the hash in our table. And so if somebody breaks into our web application and gains access to our table, our database, then all they will have is a hash of the password. All right? And that way, we have a better chance of protecting our user. The hash will not make any sense. Okay? Now, whenever we want to verify if the user is the user, when the user types in their password, we will have a function that takes that password, runs it through the hash function, and the hash it gets, we will compare it with the hash we have stored in the table. And if they match up, then it means it's the same password. If not, we know it's two different passwords, because two different passwords will produce two different hashes. Again, these are things you have done before. All right. So we don't store the unencrypted or unhashed password in our database. Right? We don't do that. Nobody does that. And then activation means has the user activated their account? Have they signed in? Okay. Before we actually store this in our database, let's log in. I need to add an extension to my database. So sudo -u postgres psql. Okay. I have my tables there. So let me connect to quote box. Okay, good. And so while I'm connected to quote box, I will add this extension that allows us to deal with the CI text keyword. So create extension if not exists CI text, case insensitive text. Okay, so in my case, it already exists. Okay, in your case, it probably doesn't exist, and so it will say create extension. Okay, so I have it. So I can exit, and I can log into my database. Am I in the directory with my, yeah, good. So I can open up Postgres, PSQL, $ quote box _ db _ data source name. Okay, I'm in. And so /I users.sql. All right. /d users. Okay. So I have ID. I have created that. I have name, email, password, hash, and I have activated Boolean. And I have a couple indexes. Okay, user pk and users email _key. Okay. All right. Right. Hash indexes are just a way of allowing the database to look up information quicker. Okay. So that's the whole point of indexes, right? All right. So we have our database table created. So of course we now have two tables. One is called quotations, one is called users. Good. So since we now have the table, what's the next thing we have to do? If you recall, once we have a table, we have to somehow model that table inside our Go code. And so we have to create a type. So let's go back to package, package, models, okay, and so currently we have a type named quote, okay, so whatever gets read in from the database, we're going to store it in this quote struct. So whatever gets read into our or read in from the users table, we're going to store it in the user struct. So what does a user struct have? Well, it will have an ID, okay, of type int. It will have a name, of course, of type string. Again, nothing new. We've done this already. It will have an email, okay, of type string, right? And then, of course, it has a hashed password. Okay, and the hashed password, that byte A is simply a slice, a byte slice. Okay, so the hash is just a bunch of bytes. Okay, and then we have created. Okay, and that would be time that time. Okay, it will be represented as time that time. And finally, active, which active, which is bool. Okay, so again, when we read in, when you want to manipulate a row from our database, we'll have to store it in a user struct. All right. So this struct, this user struct, is how we represent our PostgreSQL row in Go code. Okay. Let's create a few error messages. Okay, so that if we ever have any errors, like no matches or whatever, we can actually use them. So I'm going to say var. Notice my error messages, I'll start with ERR because that's a standard convention in the Go programming language, where error messages must start with ERR. And they should not start with capital letter. Okay? They should not start with, sorry, here. The message should not start with a capital letter. Right? It should be small letters. Okay, error invalid credentials. So if the user enters the wrong username or password or whatever, then we'll report an error saying, okay, models, okay, invalid credentials. Okay. Now, we also want to specify if they are entering an email that is already in the database. So email duplicate error duplicate email. Okay. Okay, so error duplicate email. Errors dot new. Again, nothing new, right? We've seen this before. So once you know how to build one CRUD app, you can build another. Duplicate email. Okay. Now, just like how we don't. Do you know why I say? Do you? Okay, this is a new idea. When I have import, I have import errors and import time. Now, I could have actually done that like this. Import errors and then import again time. Okay? But in Go, if you're going to use the same keyword, then you just use the keyword once. And the thing that and the thing that is unique, you put them in parentheses. Okay? So this means import errors, import time. I have var this, var dot. So I don't want to use all of that. All I'm going to do is to say var and remove all the vars from here. Okay. Okay. And so that's the same thing like I had before. Var error record not found, var error invalid credentials, var error duplicate email. So I don't have to repeat that var every time, which would get annoying, right? If I have to write 10 error codes, I don't want to write var 10 times. Right? Good. Okay, so that is our data type. Okay, our user data type. All right. Good. So we're making progress. So the next thing we need to do, of course, is to create our code that deals with a user. And so to jog your memory, in the Postgres QL directory, we have a file named quotes.go. And in this file, we imported everything we needed. Okay. And then we created a quote model. In our case, we're going to create a user model. And we're going to have initialize it with an instance of our database connection, because we will need that database connection to interact with the database. And then in here, of course, we create methods. Insert, read, get, and so on, right? And so we will do the same thing for user. So we're going to create a new file right inside Postgres. So let me create a new file. Okay. And I'm going to call this one, of course, users, right? .go. Okay. So obviously, it's a part of Postgres, right? I don't need to retype this. So I'm going to import, quotes. I'm going to import all of this, right? Because we need these things. All right. Good. And so I want to create my new type, and I'm going to call this type user model struct. Okay. And of course, we need a database connection. So DB is of type SQL dot DB. Okay. Good. Now, once I have that type, we will need methods. And so if we want to deal with a user, there are a few things we need to do. One of them is to insert the user into the database. So if the user successfully registers, we need to add them to the database, right? And by successfully registering, I mean that they actually gave us a valid username and they gave us a valid email and they gave us a valid password. So if everything works out, I will send from my handler, I will call insert, and I will give it the name of the user, I will give it the email of that user, and I will give it the password of that user. All these things are string, right? All of them are string, right? Okay, so all the things the user enters on this sign up form, they're string. We'll return an error message if there was an error. Okay, for now, let's just return nil. Okay, all right, that's suitable. Now, the next thing we have to do is authenticate the user. So when the user actually logs in, we want to authenticate that user. Okay, meaning, is the user in our database, and is the password and email, right? Is the password and email that they give us the right thing, the right credentials? And so later on, we will implement this function. For now, I'm just gonna make it just return something, right? So authenticate. Authenticate. Okay, so authenticate will need the email. So this is when the user tries to log in. They will issue an email, they will issue a password. All of these are strings, of course. And then my authenticate function will return the ID of the user, okay, which is of type int, and an error message if there is one. All right. Okay, for now we'll just return 0 and nil. Okay, that's authenticate. And the next thing we want to be able to do, all right, from our users that go from our user model, is we want to be able to get a user, right? Just like what we did with the quote, where we could get a single quote. I want to be able to get a single user from my database, okay? And so to get a user, very simple. All I need to do is to get the ID, and I will search the database, the table, for that user. And if I find that user, I will return the user. So models that user, okay? And then of course, I will return an error. Okay. Again, nothing new here. So I'm just gonna return nil. I'm gonna return nil. Good. So that's what it looks like when we want to deal with a user. We want to be able to insert the user into the database table. We want to be able to add in. And as a part of that process, we want to be able to get the user. Okay, get the user. All right, get the user. By getting the user, we will know what their email is, we will know what their username is, and we will know what their hashed password is, because we'll need those things. Okay, so again, this is nothing new. All we have been doing is using all the tools, the concepts, the methods, the ideas that we have learned in all the previous weeks. Okay, so again, before we insert a user, we have to do a few things, right? Okay, so all right, that's the hard part. Okay, all right, sign up user form, sign up user. Okay, user, and then of course later on we're gonna add the other handlers, where we log in the login user form, the login user, and the logout. But for now, we'll just keep these two. All right. Now, the next thing we need to do, of course, is to go to our main, right? You know that. And we need to make our application struct know about our user model. So just like what we had for quotes, okay, we want our application struct to know about our users model. So users will be of type PostgreSQL user model. And so by doing this, if you recall, we're doing dependency injection. And so all the handlers will now have access to the user model and to the user model methods and whatever variables is there, such as the database connection. All right, and so we'll just come down here, right? And we'll simply add that in the app. Okay, so I'm going to say users will be, oh, not equal, but colon, and it will be a new Postgres users, sorry, will be a new PostgreSQL user model. And what I have to give it is a database connection, right? And of course, I need to end with a semicolon. Okay. And that takes care of everything we need to do. Okay. So again, this is our last step for this video. Okay. So to recap, we had to create a table, right? So you create a table. And then of course, once you create a table, then we assume we know what our routes are and the handler names. And so we actually add our routes using a Restful Routing approach. And then of course, we need our handlers, okay? And of course, the handlers will be needed and they have to be calling other things. Specifically, those things are our models, right? They need to get access to the methods that allow them to do their job. And so we had to actually create a type called user, which represents a user when we take a user from the PostgreSQL users table and bring it into our Go application. We represent that user using this struct. And once we have this type user, we are now able to go to PostgreSQL, where we actually write code that the handler can call. And so we have these methods, and remember, to have methods, we need a type. So we create this user model type, and this user model type, you have to give it a database connection. And so by having that database connection DB, we're able to actually interact with the database. So when we do insert, we're going to write SQL code to actually insert a new user. Likewise, Authenticate will allow us to check to see if the credentials the user gives us when they're trying to log in is correct. And also get simply means getting a user from the database. All right. Once we've done all of this, we then set up everything in main by dealing with dependency injection. And so we add users to our application struct. And then, of course, we come down here where we are creating a new application. Ampersand is like new in C++, right? When you create a new object, right? You create a class and then you say new, right? New an object of whatever. So we don't really have to type new here. We just use ampersand. So this means I'm creating a new instance of the application type. And I'm going to give it all of these things. All right. Again, none of this should confuse you because we've all done this many times. It's just a matter of sitting down and designing on paper, writing on paper, what are my routes? What do I need? What tables I need in my database? What types I need in Go to represent those tables? How will I access the database? So I need a user model type so that I can actually deal with the database connection. Okay, I will stop here. And in the next lesson, we will go ahead and look at how we can insert, how we can deal with signing up a new user. I'll see you in that next lesson.